Um, Thank you very much for having us here, to Scott and the Amira team. This is a tremendous place for us to be. Barbados, working with Barbados Light and Power, with the Amira team, engaging with the people here. It's a really exciting time for us. We come from a place of technology, from Silicon Valley. We have people that sit in engineering labs and universities, and we tinker and we play. Scott mentioned Tesla as a brand is really interesting. As a brand, we've tried to solve some real problems. We've tried to solve problems that have been in industries that have existed for 100+ years. One of the ways that we could do that is by taking a step back and looking at some of the ways things have been done and challenging them at their core. We call that first principles. It's a scientific process where you just back it down and keep questioning it until it starts to make sense at the most simple level. We've been able to do that on the car side of the business. We've been able to do that on the battery side of the business, and we're moving into solar as well. One of the things that we love about working with Amira and Barbados Light and Power is there is no ability to come and start a company from scratch in the utility space. There is a lot of history, there's a lot of infrastructure, there are a lot of problems that we have to solve. So while we have technology that we think is really interesting, it's partnering with companies like Amira that understand how the grid operates, where we can make change easily, where change is tough, where we have to engage other stakeholders. So all of this discussion about solving problems, about working together, about engaging multiple stakeholders, about changing the discussion from being a centralized system and going out to being a two-way discussion between the utility, the government, the civil agents, the homeowners, the business owners. It's what needs to happen for change to be made. So we're very grateful for the conversation, for the partnership, and here for the engagement of the people in Barbados and the different organizations that are represented here. So thank you for that. I'm going to have to kind of point to the screen. One of the things we want to do is talk about kind of where we came from and why we're doing what we do. And we'll start with a little bit of kind of some original slides that Elon Musk, our CEO, presented about what brought us into the power wall world and the power pack world and that's the energy storage world. It really was just looking at what's happening in the carbon space, right, and CO2 emissions. If we can go to the next slide, you can see that over time, regardless of the cause, right, we're not here to talk about politics and what made this happen. We are simply here to look at what's happening today. We're looking at real problems, right? We've seen increased level of storms and hurricanes, things that really impact our lives. And we can see a direct correlation with where that's coming from. So if we step back and go through these first principles, right, and we start looking at what can we do to make an impact, what we can do is move towards a renewable society. When you have the ability to start thinking about the technology, the chemical engineering, the different products that we can develop, you start thinking about how we could shape a mission and drive products and solutions that help things transition away from that previous graph. So we ended up coming up with a mission for overall Tesla, and it's accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. It's a very, very big statement. Tesla is one part of that, and everyone else in this room is a part of that. So we're not making a mission for Tesla itself. We're making a mission to contribute to part of this process, to help move it along faster. So if you look at the mission, then you say, what can we actually do? And we start thinking about products, right? We actually started as a car company with the Roadster. We got into the Model S and the Model 3, and there was a master plan behind that. And part of change, because change is difficult, is making things simple. And the master plan was originally move into the auto space, right? Make an electric car that people want to buy because it's a great car, not because it's an electric car. And if you start doing that, you have to say, well, it hasn't been done before. So we need to make a low volume production car at a high cost to figure things out and get moving. And then you move into a medium volume, medium price point car. And then you move into a high volume, low price car. So we've moved from the Roadster to the Model S to the Model 3, and the Model 3 is the car that a lot of you have heard about, which starts at $35,000 US. So we're moving down that path. We think there needs to be a very simple story on the energy space too. And it's working with utilities to figure out what these things mean and how we can work with the counterparties to create these products and deploy these products. Tesla itself makes products, but we work with the utilities and we work with the government and we work with people. We figure out how to create solutions in the field that empower customers, that solve problems, that help more renewables come onto the grid, that make the grid more resilient so you can last through storms and hurricanes and other natural disasters. So we move into the products. The future that we want has to do with the generation side, storage side, and transport. This is all around clean, renewable energy. We want to make our own clean, renewable energy. We want to store it so we can control it, we can share it, we can support others that are using it, and we want to use it for transport and shift away from a fossil fuel-based transportation industry. In an environment like Barbados, which is a place that we think is fascinating for how we can really make impact, significant impact, and not just in one silo, but make impact across the island. Transportation is a huge piece of that, right? Transportation can interact with the grid. We can charge cars and charge cars intelligently to make sure that the impact on the grid not only serves as a form of energy for the car, but if you use the way that you charge the grid as a way to stabilize the grid, you have multiple other effects. So this whole ecosystem can work together. So these are the three areas that we focus right now. And by the way, I just want to say my goal here is to just get excited about the products. We've heard about what Amira is doing. We've heard about Barbados Light and Power. We've heard about the customer experience and engagement. We've heard about the superpowers and the disruptive innovation. These are all parts of the story, and we're excited to be a part of that. So that's my goal. We want to engage with you and talk to you about these different products, and these products that we think are really going to hopefully make an impact in your lives. So the Powerwall is our residential product. It can also be small commercial. So you think about this small box here. It stands about 4 feet high, 3 feet wide, and about 8 inches thick. It is a little heavy, 275 pounds, something like that. But that's because it's got a tremendous amount of energy and power in there. So we have 5 kilowatts of average power, and we have 7 kilowatts of peak. So this is pretty similar to a good-sized solar system, and it is more power than average-sized homes typically consume. So with one Powerwall, we're talking about installing it in your home and really being able to feed your home power when there's a power outage, or partnering with the utility and supplying energy and feeding your home. It also works with solar, so most of the time you can install a Powerwall by itself, but it's also interesting to see how can you feed that Powerwall with your own renewable energy system. When the grid goes down, can you operate as an island until the grid comes back up? When the grid is straining, can you help the grid? Can you reduce the strain from the grid? All of these things are possible. Solar has been around for a long time, but with the advent of batteries, we really think we're finally at a place where we can start solving some of these problems together. So you can see it's really about storing energy, it's about controlling energy, and it's about resiliency. So with the recent storms, which unfortunately have been more and more common, we've seen an increase from moving just to from focusing on moving to renewables and resiliency, hardening our infrastructure. We need to be able to get through storms and hurricanes with a much quicker response time. Ideally, we should be able to turn on our systems after storms pass and work together with the utility to be able to support each other in the rebuilding and rebuilding process, right? And hopefully minimize the rebuild that's necessary, because as we work with utilities, and utilities like Amira and Barbados Light and Power and Amira Caribbean, when they're coming back and rebuilding their infrastructures, we're starting to rebuild them smarter, right? We're not just going and talking about putting up the old wires that used to be up there. We're talking about creating a resilient infrastructure and really rethinking what that means and how to survive through these hurricanes without as much impact. If we move from the power wall, I think we're going to move into a quick video, which hopefully works. This is to show what a smart home, what an engaged home, what an empowered customer could look like with some of our products. This is some of the apps. So you have an app, and you should be able to see and control from your app what's happening in your home. You can see that your car is plugged in and charging, your solar is operating, your battery is discharging. Intelligently controlling your system. When the grid goes down, can you have power? Can you have power during the day? Can you have power at night? Can you control it? These are all things that we're moving towards and we think are very exciting. So that's the residential side. If we move to the next product in our energy storage system, it's our Power Pack. So our Power Pack it's our commercial and industrial and utility scale product. So this is when we start going to resorts, grocery stores, production facilities that are manufacturing. When we talk about working with the utility and helping for the deployment of solar and wind resources, and taking intermittent resources like solar and wind, which are normally choppy, and the utility has a part of a task to try and stabilize that, right? Solar is great and wind is great, but the utility has to provide reliable, consistent power. So therein lies the challenge, and that's where batteries can come into play. The utility can work with those to help stabilize all those resources, and it makes moving towards a higher percentage of renewables possible. So this product we call it scalable and modular. We'll show you some other pictures of a footprint where there's essentially 5 of those cabinets. Those are the cabinets that hold batteries. So if you actually opened up that cabinet, you would see a bunch of modules stacked up almost like server blades on a server rack, or if you're like, they look like pizza boxes almost, and you stack 16 of them. So everything about the inside of that is modular. And then we have 5 of those and another box with inverters. So you have the batteries for energy and the inverters for power. And that format, we can just cut and paste. So I'll show you some utility scale projects where we've cut and pasted that dozens and hundreds of times. And you could also have just one of those. So it's intended to be infinitely modular. You can work with small commercial entities, and you can scale up to the largest wind or solar facilities out there. It's also important to note that batteries, in a utility scale application, batteries by themselves still provide tremendous value, right? Whether it's doing frequency response, whether it's providing grid services to make the grid more reliable. Instead of ramping up and ramping down generation assets, reciprocating engines, diesel generators, instead of doing that, you're using the battery to take the place of that. So you can actually take a battery and replace a gas turbine, right? You can take out those assets because in a traditional infrastructure, you're using those assets to do the quick response. Now you can fill the battery when you have extra capacity, when it makes sense to fill the batteries, when it's as little strain on your existing infrastructure as possible, and then you can deploy them when you need them. And that's where Amira and Barbados Light and Power come in to tell us and work with us on how to best deploy those assets. Behind the meter, or distributed, where it's on site with customers, homeowners and building owners, and also for their facilities. So we can have solar, batteries and solar, batteries by themselves, in all these different configurations, really creating a much stronger utility. Okay? So a lot of people have been talking about batteries. Batteries themselves are not brand new. They didn't just come to market last year. We've been doing this for quite some time. We use a technology called lithium ion. It's what you might find in your laptops or in your cell phones. We should be very comfortable with this technology. We believe we've made some innovation in these areas where we've created from the cell level and the chemistry that actually goes in there, all the way into how we package them and manufacture them, how we cool them. We have our own liquid cooling that we use, so we actually cool every single cell, so we can take heat away and we can bring heat in as we need it to make sure we're operating in any environment that we might install a system. So all of these things are difficult, and nobody wants to be a guinea pig, right? So these are sites that are in the process of building or are operating already. These are real utility sites. These projects are working. We're adding value to the utility. We're adding value to customers. People are saving money. Not just saving money because their actual cost of getting the kilowatt hours are starting to be less, but maybe they didn't have to make other investments. Maybe they could take out existing generation assets. Maybe they didn't have to rebuild part of their transmission or distribution network. So the first one is on Australia. There was a bit of news about this. This was Mr. Musk basically throwing a challenge out there to Australia, not just one person, the entire country. And he said 100 megawatts and 100 megawatt hours in 100 days. And that challenge was accepted. So we are doing this project, and we have to complete this project in 100 days, or the threat is it would be free. So it's an all-hands-on-deck project. It's a great project, though. We happen to be co-located with a renewable resource, but that doesn't matter. We actually happen to be co-located with them because it's a good project, and it's a good partnership, and it's a good place to be. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the battery wouldn't serve the grid without being tied to that renewable asset. Batteries can operate in a bunch of different environments, and we stack applications. Some of one battery might be used to support renewables. It might be used to provide other sorts of grid services. It might be used to defer future investments. And what we do is work with utilities and work with people like yourselves to figure out how to best create that solution which stacks those different applications up to make the most sense for the grid. Southern California Edison is another great example. This one is not tied to renewables. We actually had a natural gas leak, a pipeline leak going to a peaker plant. And instead of trying to fix that plant, we actually took that plant out of service, worked with Southern Cal Edison, and the project was, instead of repairing the pipeline and repowering a plant, we would create a battery system that could be filled from another plant that isn't as expensive to operate, that wasn't used as a peaker, and we would fill the battery and operate instead of the peaker plant. So that's a great example of other ways that we can do utility scale projects not tied to renewables and still try and create tremendous value for the utility. Kauai Island, this is called KIUC, is the acronym, one of the smaller islands in Hawaii. So this is a good example of when you're in an island and you really want to put in as much solar as you can, but you need to be able to control that solar. So in this case, we took that solar, we paired it with storage, and now instead of having just the solar, 13 megawatts of solar running, we have 13 megawatts of solar running with 13 megawatts of power, and instead of a nice bell curve of, although it looks more like this when it's solar, but instead of having that curve of taking the power when it's generated, now we can actually fill the batteries and dispatch power in a smooth, even way. So we can really serve the island with smooth, consistent power that comes from the sun. So it's fascinating. If we move to the next slide. So this is another video. This is the KIUC video. So we'll give you a flavor for what that looks like. So it's a great site to visit if anyone wants to come. I think one of the important things here is this is an island environment. We did another project in America Samoa. It's really important for us to be able to operate reliably in whatever environment that we are moving into, whether it's access to be able to do construction, working with local resources, training people locally to be able to install and maintain systems. In this case, saltwater spray and corrosion. We're definitely present in the Caribbean. We have a great relationship with our partners in Amira and Barbados Light and Power and Amira Caribbean. We really cherish it. We're here to support this discussion. We're here to be engaged with you, and are very, very proud to be a part of this team. So short and sweet, but I'm going to be around also later to talk. We also have my colleague Arthur Eswine in the back. So we'd love to chat, talk to you more about what batteries are. They are interesting. It is great technology, but they're very safe, they're very reliable, they're very flexible. So we'd love to talk to you about how it all works from our side. So, should we just wrap up? Okay. Thank you all very much.